This is Mohammed Ghous, and this is the last lecture of my hypothesis on quantum relativity. Now we have finally the one-inch equation called equation of everything, which describes everything about this. No matter we are talking about quantum bodies or macro bodies or celestial bodies, it explains everything: celestial bodies, quantum bodies. But let's derive this equation. Now, first of all, what is this? This is describing the Lagrangian of particles, the standard model of Lagrangian, which describes the dynamics of bosons, fermions, and Higgs bosons and Ghous particles. And when we add this term with the total amount of energy in our universe, like let's say it is this term describes, or in other words, this term describes. And the reason I have written n is describing the 9 dimensions. But as it is contracted, I write it in terms of TeV. Now this is describing the total amount of energy in the universe because it is equal to the total gravitons in our universe depends upon the magnitude of it plus its interaction give rise to the dark energy, describing the amount of graviton. Now, this we have the graviton particle, we have this electron, proton, neutron, fermions, bosons. Now we have the graviton particles, and we have the electron, proton, neutron, and quarks. So, if we add this all terms of, we found a massive equation, a big equation, but in short term, it can be written as E defines everything equals to the amount of energy, or in other words, it is representing the uh, stress energy, making a curve in space-time, indirectly explaining the graviton particle of different dimensions, depends upon its dimensions, or in other words, total amount of energy or existence plus its dynamics. So this whole equation explains the amount of that thing and its dynamics. Let's take a few examples, like what if I'm talking about Earth? How this equation will explain. Now, first of all, this equation tell the Earth can be told from this thing, the superposition stress energy as it exists in n equals 2. It is sticked in this n equals 2 universe. So this term explains Earth, and what is Earth made up of? It is made up of small particles, atoms. This term explains the dynamics of these particles, and this term explains how it exists within that graviton. Now, this hypothesis gives us another conservation law, conservation of size, which is stating that everything must be macro in some reference and also micro in some reference. Like Earth is macro with respect to us, but it is micro with respect to higher dimensional gravity. Like this is our universe, this is a higher dimensional graviton, G3, G4, G5, and this is G2, our universe. And Earth is also too much smaller as it is a bubble of a graviton. Now, it is simply stating that it must be macro and micro. Now, let's take an example of electron. Electron is micro with respect to us, but it is macro with respect to the small gravitons like us. And that's the reason electrons are less interacting as their frequencies are very small as compared to the electron macro with respect to the graviton. Now, the last thing that it has any practical experimental conclusion? Yes, it has. We have described the equation of everything like this. Like, what's the conclusion or any experimental proof for this? Like, if in the Hadron Collider we collapse the particles at very high speed, at speed of light, what will happen? A state which is when the energy increases, then its energy level limit, and it forms something like a black hole, or something like wormhole or black hole, making a connection with higher dimensional gravitons. And this is simply an experimental proof, and that's the reason we need tons of energy to find the graviton, as they are less interacting and they exist in higher dimensions. So we need to increase our stress energy level to basically, in other words, increases our curvature level, making us higher dimensional graviton. So these are the series of my theory, quantum relativity. Thank you.